Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. In the last video that I recorded, we were looking at this article in the October 2025 Leahona. It's from Elder Ronald A. Rasband, Covenants, Power, and Promises. And in the last video that I did about this, I said that this article is just full of gems and that I'm going to make several videos out of this. So this is the next video. He relays a story of his great-great-great-great-grandfather, Asael Perry, and it had to do with the Kirtland Temple. And then he left a footnote, which takes you to Stephen C. Perry letter to Wilford Woodruff. And this is in the church history catalog. And this letter by itself is going to make for a couple of videos. I'm so happy that I came across this. You know, if you've been watching my channel, that I'm keeping track of all these visions, visitations, near-death experiences, end-of-life experiences, so on and so forth, where someone has an encounter with a heavenly being or through vision sees something. This is a collection of accounts from general authorities or people that they know or family members. It's not just, anybody, because I think a lot of people have experiences, but that's kind of what I've narrowed it down to. And yeah, we're going to look at the next one that I've added to the spreadsheet. Now, just really quick, this letter was written by Stephen Perry. He's the son of Asael. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. So this would be, well, unless it's like a great uncle, this would possibly be Elder Rasband's great grandfather. He joined the church 1833 in Middlebury, New York. He was out down here. He was at Mount Pisgah in Iowa. This is somewhere that I recently made a video on my Explore Church Sites channel. Please make sure to subscribe to that and check out just the wealth of information and videos that I've made for that channel. But Mount Pisgah was a way station as the Saints were going from Nauvoo to Utah. And this is essentially like a twin of Adam-on-Diamond. In the background here, there's this valley that's about the same size as Adam-on-Diamond, and then there's all these different monuments. This is kind of like the main monument, but there's all these other things to see there. If you get a chance to go there, please do. And by the way, Grand River connects Mount Pisgah with Adam-on-Diamond, so I think that's really interesting. But anyway, so he was there, and then he ended up in Springville, Utah. And so he was just an early church member. He wasn't a general authority or anything like that, but he is related in some way to Elder Rasband, possibly his great-great-great-grandfather. Okay, so I'm just going to read it directly from this because it's pretty easy to read here. Springville, November 21st, 1884. I don't know what that says. I don't think it says president. Pressed? I don't know. Wilford Woodruff, historian of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Dear brother, feeling the importance of having incidents that have transpired in our history and phenomena which we accept as evidence of the coming forth of the work of the last days, therefore, I consider it my duty to present a few items for your consideration to be placed upon the pages of our history if you deem it worthy of a place there. One circumstance was a phenomenon which occurred in my boyhood, which was seen by my father's family, I being among them. I think it must have occurred between 1825 and 1830. I should think about the month of September between the hours of 6 and 9 o'clock in the evening. We saw a very large army of soldiers, to all appearance, marching in the firmament. Now, for those of you that have been listening for a while, do you remember this? We've covered this before, but this is another account. I'm going to read the other two as well. But this is now a third account of that same incident. I don't think he mentions it here, but this was on the night that of the day that Joseph Smith received the gold plates. Okay. He received the gold plates, and yes, it was in September. And this manifestation took place in the night sky. And there were multiple people that saw it. I'm going to read those other accounts in just a minute. So, an army of soldiers marching in the firmament, coming from a northwesterly direction and meeting a similar army from a southeasterly direction nearly over our heads. We were standing at the west door of my father's house and saw the army from the northwest most distinctly, and saw the front of the opposite army also. We saw them march up and apparently discharge firearms, and I am almost sure that I saw the flash of the same and probably heard the report. But being but a child, and it being about 55 years ago, I would not like to be too positive as to hearing. We have to skip a couple. As to hearing the report. When to all appearance they had discharged their pieces, they would open to the right and left and countermarch to the rear, and others come to the front, and so continue to march to the front, discharge and countermarch. This continued for about an hour, and probably longer. As near as I can remember, they were in ranks of 10 or 12, and as distinct to view as any army at about 1/4 of a mile distant. We were residing in Middlebury, Genesee, now Wyoming County, New York. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for this video. That's all that we're going to read from the letter, but believe me, there is more. You can also find the whole letter here on the Wilford Woodruff Papers website. I'll put a link for this in the description box below, but just a word of caution, spoilers, because I'm going to cover the rest of the letter in a future video, probably within the next day or two. Okay, so now let's go to my spreadsheet. I'm going to zoom in here. And this was on September, according to the other accounts, and I'm all but certain that these are all three the same thing that's going on. So September 22nd, 1827. And I have two other accounts. So whenever I have multiple accounts of the same event, I put them all in the same cell. Okay, so here's the first one. We have Heber C. Kimball, and then Brigham Young. And yeah, why did I not put their because this should be oops, sorry, this should be president of the church. Sorry, I'll take care of Heber C. Kimball later. Okay, let's read his account. This comes from Life of Heber C. Kimball, compiled by Orson F. Whitney, 1888, pages 31 to 33. That book is full of information. I at some point I need to read the entire thing because it is just full of information. Okay, so he says, I had retired to bed when John P. Green, who was living within 100 steps of my house, came and waked me up, calling upon me to come out and behold the scenery in the heavens. I woke up and called my wife and sister Fanny Young, sister to Brigham Young, who was living with us, and went out of doors. It was one of the most beautiful starlight nights, so clear that we could see to pick up a pin. We looked to the eastern horizon and beheld a white smoke arise toward the heavens, and as it ascended, it formed itself into a belt and made a noise like the sound of a mighty wind, and continued southwest forming a regular bow, dipping in the western horizon. After the bow had formed, it began to widen out and grow clear and transparent of a bluish cast. It grew wide enough to contain 12 men abreast. Yeah, and that's what we just read in this letter. Should I go back to it? He said something about, like, let's see, they were in ranks of 10 or 12. Yeah, right here, 10 or 12. Okay. Sorry, got to go back up here. It grew wide enough to contain 12 men abreast. In this bow, an army moved, commencing from east and marching to west. They continued marching until they reached the western horizon. They moved in platoons and walked so close that the rear ranks trod in the steps of their file leaders until the whole bow was literally crowded with soldiers. We could distinctly see the muskets, bayonets, and knapsacks of the men who wore caps and feathers like those used by the American soldiers in the last war with Britain. And also saw their officers with their swords and equipage and the clashing and jingling of their implements of war, and could discover the forms and features of the men. The most profound order existed throughout the entire army. When the foremost man stepped, every man stepped at the same time. I could hear the steps. When the front rank reached the west horizon, a battle ensued, as we could distinctly hear the report of arms and the rush. No man could judge of my feelings when I beheld that army of men as plainly as ever I saw armies of men in the flesh. It seemed as though every hair of my head was alive. The scenery we gazed upon for hours. Okay, so according to him, it wasn't just an hour, it was hours, plural, until it began to disappear. After I became acquainted with Mormonism, I learned that this took place the same evening that Joseph Smith received the records of the Book of Mormon from the angel Moroni, who had held those records in his possession. John Young Sr. and John P. Green's wife, Rhoda, were also witnesses. My wife, being frightened at what she saw, said, "Father Young, what does all this mean?" "Why, it's one of the signs of the coming of the Son of Man," he replied, in a lively, pleased manner. The next night, similar scenery was beheld in the west by the neighbors. Oh, that's interesting. Because I didn't read this before I started making this video. Last time I read this was whenever I made that first video. The next night, similar scenery was beheld in the west by the neighbors, representing armies of men who were engaged in battle. A wonderful foreshadowing, truly, of the warfare to be waged between the powers of good and evil from the times truth sprang from earth and righteousness looked down from heaven upon the boy Joseph, predestined to bring to light the buried records of the past. We're going to look at a map in just a minute to see where these three accounts were viewed from. Okay, and the next one is from Brigham Young. This is in a book called The Mendon Saints, Their Lives and Legacy. This is the best source that I have. I haven't been able to track down the primary source yet. Okay. The night the plates were found, there was a great light in the east, and it went to the west, and it was very bright, although there was no moon at the time. I gazed at it in company with my wife. The light was perfectly clear and remained several hours. It formed into men as if there were great armies in the west, and I then saw in the northwest armies of men come up. It was a very remarkable occurrence. Okay, so let's take a look at the map. This is my map for church sites, but I'm going to go ahead and use it for this video. And I went ahead and added the Hill Cumorah Visitor Center, over time, I'm going to go beyond just Missouri and Illinois. I'm going to try and get all the church sites on here if I can. But, okay, so this red place marker, here's the Hill Cumorah. Okay. And then these yellow markers, these are the 3 different locations where this was viewed. Port Byron, in the case of Brigham Young, Mendon for Heber C. Kimball, and then Middlebury. This is the one that we read from Stephen C. Perry. So the newest account that I've added to the spreadsheet. So if we zoom out a little bit, here's the state of New York right here. Here's New York City down here. And this is taking place on the opposite side of the state. And it is a little bit spread out. Let's take a look here. Let's measure. Let's measure from Middlebury to Palmyra area. That's 77 kilometers. Let's change it to miles. About 48 miles. So yeah, that is kind of spread out. We did read in the Heber C. Kimball account that it happened again the next night into the west. So I wonder if that's the one that Stephen C. Perry and his family saw, was the one the next night. But this is a very large area for that to be happening. And you have to wonder how many people witnessed it. Especially if it's like someone that was not or did not become well, they wouldn't have been a member of the church at that time. Especially if someone that, never ended up being a member of the church. I wonder what they thought that was. I wonder if you can find this in other people's journals. I wouldn't even know how to search that. How do you find journals from people that lived in this general area and at that time? If you know how, that might be something to look into. Of course, a lot of people may have already been asleep, and so they didn't see it. But I don't know. It's pretty incredible what happened. And I'm really happy to have a third account now. And just from 3 different locations. It's not just like a third account where it's like 2 people saw it in Mendon and then 1 person saw it in Port Byron. It was 3 different people, 3 completely different locations. And like at that same time, essentially. So I imagine it looked something like this. I was trying to get the AI on Grok and some other places to put together a type of scene, but this is the best that I was able to get it to do. So it probably looks something like this, but it's really interesting how it's described, and I don't know, what a blessing for them. But all right, well, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.